Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is April 29th, 2024. You're listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. Welcome back to a new week of the Daily AI Show, rounding out April. 2 more days to go. I work in the sales space, so I'm always keenly aware of when cycles are ending or quarters are ending, not because I personally sell, but because all the people that are my clients do. So I was just writing a newsletter this morning and, thinking about how there's just the 2 days left in the end of the month. And that usually means it's going to be very busy for lots of sales reps. But today we're not talking about sales. We are talking about part 2 of Stanford's report, the AI Index report. But we're going to be focusing today specifically on the back half of the report because we did not get to it on our first show. And so we're going to be talking about education, policy, diversity, policy and diversity, public and nope, I had that wrong. Education, policy, diversity, and public opinion. I can read the screen. So we want to do, kind of take a few minutes on all of them. We didn't want to rush the last time we had this show. And so we're going to kind of do it in order here for the main section, and we'll all jump in with comments along the way. But we're going to kind of kick it off with Andy because the chapter 6 of the report is actually education. And this is one we were all saying, hey, we don't want to rush into because we were all really, really excited to talk about it, as well as some of the others. So Andy, do you want to kind of kick us off with the education piece here?
Sure. Here's an overview of what the Stanford University Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Group put out in the Artificial Intelligence Index report just recently, a couple of weeks ago. So they looked at the longitudinal study of the number of CS bachelor's graduates, so computer science graduates in the undergraduate world, and what the growth of that has been through 2022. Now, their data didn't go into 2023 and 2024. And 2023, by the way, was when the big bloom of, incredible attention and interest in large language models made this a very popular expectation that AI was really going to transform the world. So I expect that this growth that's shown in the number of American and Canadian computer science bachelors, which went from, around 10,000 in the first decade up to then it starts to penetrate 25,000 in 2017 and 35,000 in 2022. So there's definitely a growth in computer science. And the other thing that came out of their data was that the number of people doing master's degrees in computer science remained relatively flat, as did PhD graduates in that. So there's an onboarding that's happening here in computer science as it becomes increasingly recognized by high school graduates that computer science is a valid approach to a future career, especially in the world of AI. The second takeaway is that new AI PhDs have been increasingly going to industry rather than directly into academia, where the research into large language models, was happening out in industry, like at Google DeepMind. More and more CS and AI specific PhDs are going into industry, up from, again, in that same range back in the first part of the second decade of the 21st century. It was running around 45%. Now 70% in 2022 went into industry. So you see that moving towards where the money is, really. There's not a lot of money in academia supporting research, whereas now there's a huge gold rush that's happening and it's driving a lot of the people who are interested in this area to go into industry directly. And a correlate of that as well is that there's less transition of academic talent from industry to academia, right? So academia is not drawing a lot of people away from industry. Why? The gold rush is on, the AI gold rush. So they're all sticking with industry. Let's see. American high school students are taking more computer science courses, but there aren't a lot in high schools at this point, so access is an issue. And then internationally, AI-related degree programs in English have been increasing. From 2017, the index for that, which is the number of AI university study programs in English in thousands, was around 88,000, and now it's up to 25,000. That kind of, I'm sorry, I can't even get the number. So 0.88 up to 2.52, about more than doubling the number of international English AI courses that are out there. The last little point was that in the United Kingdom and Germany, you have a lot of informatics, computer science, and bachelor's graduates in IT. But the rest of Europe, anyway, is down below that, with Turkey and Poland right behind the United Kingdom and Germany. But it's the UK and Germany where European education is happening. And that's the report on education.
So I'd be curious to hear from you guys, just sort of as a follow-up to this. Obviously, this report very specific in education in terms of AI degrees, which then traditionally is going to go towards computer science, right? And that's where a lot of the focus was. It's where the data is. But as we talk about on the show, there's certainly a expansion of degrees and potential in the world of AI. I would definitely put myself in that bucket, because I don't necessarily have a background in computer science at this point. I mean, anything could change, but I don't see myself necessarily getting a degree or going that route, or even getting a non-paper degree, or just getting education, if you will, through the world of YouTube, but otherwise on computer science, because a lot more of my passion, what I like, and I think a lot of what you guys like too, is more of the language side, more of the working with the LLMs, figuring out how to get the best from them, working and maybe consulting and helping other businesses get the most out of them, which doesn't necessarily mean you need computer science. So I'm just curious, I say all that to ask you guys really quick before we pivot here. If you're a high school student and you're like, look, I'm interested in AI, how would you guys maybe help that high school student figure out which sort of path to take? Because a CS degree is not the same thing as like the path that I see myself taking, albeit I'm in my 40s. But again, the same idea, right?
Well, so this is a report put out by Stanford, right? So there, I think, is a sort of automatic education. Corporate school and academic education is key, but I have heard a bunch of experts talking about what a unique situation this is, and if you are interested in this and you have flexibility, like your parents aren't kicking you out at 18, maybe you create your own sort of situation. You get on you do a startup, you get an internship, you do real in the world learning in the areas that you're interested in, because you can always go back and get the degree at 25. But there is a magic kind of time that's happening now, right? We're in the gold rush, and also between the ages of 18 and 20, you don't want what you're studying to be not relevant.
There's also commentary, Beth, I thought you were going to go to the appropriateness of the humanities when approaching AI, because you're a great example of that with all of your dramatic and theatrical training. That ends up being very useful, and there are a number of articles that I've read that say that understanding good natural language. So, I'm an English major, so I can speak to those AI good. Okay. and also understanding logic. So philosophy is a very appropriate line of sort of academic approach. So studying philosophy and language arts, those things are very well aligned with what the future is, because the AI is going to take care of the coding and the translation of what you want to have happen into the various coding languages.
And also you can learn to code in a boot camp, right? Like if you want to do that, you can you can do a condensed kind of thing, not a 4-year. There are lots of reasons to go to college. I'm learning to code isn't one of them.
To answer your question, Ryan, and like the specifics of whether you should learn CS or not, I think that really comes down to determining what you like more, right? If you're intrigued by AI, if you're just intrigued about where my life can go and what kind of thing I should concentrate on. If we're talking about CS or not CS, just think of it as applied or design, right? So do you want to build the underpinnings of what AI could be and invent a new model and all of these kinds of things? Do you like that nitty-gritty stuff, or do you want more applied? I want to use AI so that I can start a business. I want to use AI so that I can feed the world. You know, those kinds of things. That's going to answer your question whether you want to go down the one route or the other, because it's a big time investment. I think one of the big things, and Andy was kind of touching upon this, is AI gives us an opportunity to really make generalists shine, right? If you've got a wide world experience and you've got a wide experience with a bunch of different fields, you can implement AI into your thinking and processes to result in a much higher performance or result and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. Jim, you want to keep it going with policy and governance on this one?
Sure. We'll move on to Chapter 7, Policy and Governance. There's 5 major chapter highlights that the report highlighted. And first one is the number of AI regulations in the United States sharply increases. And when they say sharply increases, they really mean sharply increases. So the report shows a graph from 2016 all the way to 2023. All right. In 2016, there was 1 regulation regarding AI made. In 2023, 25. So there was a sharp increase in the last year or so. And one of the things they highlighted as well is that from 2022 to 2023, there was also an increase of over 56% of AI regulations. So I think this is a reaction to AI hitting the mainstream around 2022, 21, 22 era. And people are just like, whoa, what does this mean now? And so all the governments really got their butt into gear to get some of these laws out. And one of them was the main EU AI policy, the AI Act. And they'd been working on that since 2021. It was the first major wide sweeping regulation policy. And they got it across the line in 2023 and finally finalized it, ratified it in 2024. 2023, like I highlighted already, but policymakers, politicians, they are definitely on the, we've got to take a look at this. It captures their attention. And this is a great example of how a well-motivated legislature can get work done, because 25 policies all in 1 year is an incredible amount of work for that part of the government. And so now we know that you can do this. We're probably going to want to expect you to perform at this level in the future, guys.
Yeah.
And it's a global thing. It's not just the US. There is a lot of movement in the US being a primary force in the AI field, but we're talking EU and global awareness of regulations and pushing forward regulations on that. And then finally, we're seeing more regulatory agencies issuing AI regulations. So after 2022, they saw it as a growing concern for AI regulation and have increased across departments. We're talking Department of Transportation, Energy, OSHA. Everyone's got their own regulation policy in the works or have been worked on. that's pretty much it. If you want to go into chapter 7.1, it really kicked off at the beginning of the year with China in January 10. Then we saw some movement for the National Security Act in March of 22nd. Then a couple more months, and then we've got the Leadership Training Act in May, followed by the National AI Commission Act in June. And then House of Reps goes to Jobs of the Future Act in July. And in that same year, we've got the Biosecurity Risk Assessment Act. And a couple days later, we've got the White House AI commitments. That's when all of the big AI companies went up to the Hill and committed. Yes, we're going to monitor ourselves. And that was only just a few days before they talked about the Transparency Act, a few more days before the Create AI Act, and that's all in July. That was like 5 different policies just in the month of July. So, that is a huge increase in the amount of regulation and bills and everything that I've ever seen go across, the Senate or House of Representatives.
And we've seen it continue this year too, with like the major companies coming together, not necessarily policy, but sort of policy in terms of child safety. In terms of AI, that's been in 2024. And of course, this report doesn't go into 2024. We'll get that next year. We'll get to see all the amazing things that happen in 2024. But I do think I agree with you, Jimmy. It's been like an explosion of policy, and everybody's trying to put their hands around something that's moving and evolving. And as much as I'll take digs at least the American government, I won't speak for other governments I don't know anything about, things move slow, things don't move the way you want to, whatever, but also super challenging. Never mind having a divided Congress or anything like that. Mm-hmm. It's super challenging for anybody, any lawmaker, to try to figure out, well, where do you put your time today so it has the most impact tomorrow? Because there's always a possibility that a lot of work, a lot of effort by a lot of people ultimately, and not necessarily even at national, but the state or local governments as well, could get overrun because AI is moving so fast. So it's a tricky thing, but it is good to see that there's just an increased, obviously, attention to it as well,
Yeah, and one last thing I want to point out for anyone who's not super familiar with that bill process is these are the policies that passed. So that's 25 policies that passed. There are 150 that were proposed. So it's not even just a matter of, oh, hey, these got made and we're passing them through. It's, we made over 150 of them and we sifted through all of them and passed 25.
Right. Yeah.
So there was a lot of work put in on that.
Any thoughts on that, Andy? Are you ready to move on?
Yeah, I'm ready to move.
So the next chapter in there was actually diversity. And there's only a couple of highlights in diversity that they have, but I think it's certainly a bigger conversation. But the highlights that they do have in there were talking about U.S. and Canadian bachelor masters. The PhDs in CS continue to grow more ethnically diverse. So it talks about, for instance, since 2011, the proportion of Asian CS bachelor degrees graduates has increased by almost 20%. And the proportion of Hispanic CS bachelor degree graduates has grown by 5%. So that was one of the first things they talked about, and that was specific to the US and Canada. There's still substantial gender gaps persisted in European informatics. So CSC and IT graduates at all educational levels. So it talks about, this is from European countries. It says, while the gender gaps have narrowed, the rate is slow and there are still significant gaps between male and female graduates in the bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees.
Yeah, let me add a little drill down on that one. There's an interesting graphic that shows this by all the European countries. And almost all of them are, mostly males graduating from these programs. In most countries, it's at or below 20% for females graduating from CS programs, with the exception of the following. there are 3 countries that are at or above 30%. They are Turkey, Romania, and Bulgaria.
Mm.
And the highest one is Bulgaria, with 35% of graduates, being female, and only 65% being male. So I thought that was very interesting that those sort of Middle Eastern, European countries, if you will, are favoring women
Yeah.
somehow in their educational programs.
Yeah, I love seeing that. I love seeing there's, it's so easy to just see like sort of the American viewpoint. We'll talk about that in a second in terms of diversity of data, because that's part of it too. But it is cool to see what some other countries and how they're addressing the diversity gaps, whether it be through gender or race or otherwise, and trying to make sure that, there's a huge drive. I know India has been a huge player in the IT space as far as what they do as far as their education. I know I saw Germany was as well on there. The third highlight on here, and then we can get into more broader thing, but I want to make sure I point it out, is this is for US K through 12 CS education. And it says it is growing more diverse, reflecting changes in both gender and ethnic representation. And it says the proportion of APCS exams taken by female students rose from about 17% way back in 2007 to over 30% in 2022. And similarly, the participation of Asian, Hispanic, Latino, Latina, and Black African-American students in APCS has consistently increased year over year. So it kind of goes back to that previous point about there's improvement, but the rate of change is slow. One thing it doesn't necessarily highlight here in the chapter highlights, but I know it talks about deeper into the chapter, is just the concern that we've talked about this on the show, that a lot of the data that is being used to train models perhaps could be overly skewed towards Western countries. And we could even say in some cases, we've said maybe even towards the Western half of our country, if you want to get really, really geographically specific, whether that's true or not, or what data, I don't know that anybody necessarily other than those that are pulling the data know that, but it is definitely a concern of mine of that, if your largest companies are American, or if not American, Canadian or French or Germany or whatever, that's still a small subset of the world, obviously, and knowledge and culture and things that really do need to be parts of AI training models. And obviously there's a huge concern that, my concern is that a lot of the knowledge and ways of things are going to get washed over as AI would continuously reply in ways that are historically either American or Western civilization, or other biases that get into there as well. And I don't have an answer to how do you fix that. I don't, as these language models get larger, do we think that helps solve the problem? I mean, what do you guys think? Like, as they go to grab more data, and there's some studies about like how much data there is left, which is a crazy idea. But to think that LLMs in several years' time, not too far in the future, may literally run out of data to consume to be part of the training models. Does that fix the problem? Is it that we've just started in the Western areas, but we expect it to expand? Or is it just more data in the Western areas and it's only going to compound the problem? What do you guys think on that?
Yeah, I think when it comes down to the question of, the biases or, focus, like you said, in Western world, or the data is where we're seeing where we are seeing researchers and developers sort of address this issue by creating localizations, right? And not just, translations. The show that we had about Sakana, the whole purpose they created that model is because they found that there wasn't accurate models that highlighted or were able to recognize cultural points, or cultural references specific to Japan or Japanese people. So they devised their own model to grab the bits and pieces and came up with this evolutionary model. But that was the start of why they wanted to develop that. and different regions have seen a buildup of creating their own models of their own data for these, whether it's cultural background, regional background, just so that there's better understanding, right?
Mm.
And that's the biggest issue that people have identified is if you don't have it at the root of when you're creating your foundational model, that's just going to exacerbate the situation as you continue to develop and fine tune. So you have to build in that layer from the beginning.
Mm.
I think that there's a risk of homogenization of global knowledge if the frontier models end up being the ones that we see today that don't sort of fairly represent the cultural diversity, although they may. I mean, it could be that there's plenty that's been written that's in the corpus of the training of those models that represents those other cultures, but is always with a Western perspective and bias. The large volume of data that has been put in there. So I think that there is going to be a different approach, which is going to be actually AI preserving cultural heritage and cultural distinctiveness, because now we see the progression towards much more capable, smaller models that can be trained on smaller sets of data, not the world's knowledge, but rather, borrowing from the skills of a foundation model, but being tuned with that country or that region or that ethnicity's corpus of data. I hate to keep using that term for all the data and the writings that we can collect around that particular culture and continuously feeding those will be representative of those cultures. And I think there's an opportunity for democratization so that you have distinct and separate, but then when combined, everything's represented. Hopefully that's the direction we go.
I hope so. I mean, there's a lot there's a whole probably conversation on that, right, Andy, which is like, okay, who is going to go in and help the traditionally underrepresented communities around the world? Not to say they don't necessarily.
Microsoft invested 1.5 billion in Arabic. So
well, yeah, I agree with you, and I mean, and maybe that's the answer. Maybe, but like, there's also a concern of who's going in and what biases did they have going to help. Is it truly altruistic? Are they going in and saying, well, we want to preserve this, this smaller culture's data, in some remote islands of whatever, Polynesia or whatever, or go Fiji or other places that may not necessarily have the ability to even hand over or even understand how they would transfer their knowledge to smaller LLMs. And so maybe it is a Microsoft, maybe it is corporate, maybe there's somebody that.
Well, I think there's academic approaches too. Like the Vanuatu is going to be done by an academic approach, I think, rather than a corporate one, just because, while the Arabic countries are very rich, there's a reason why Microsoft wants to have purchase there. And so they've invested in a local company in Dubai, I think, or Abu Dhabi, forget where. And that's the way they're doing it. But I think there is cultural preservation assisted by AI so that you can actually listen to the languages, you can speak the languages and have simultaneous translation. All of that, I think, is really hopeful. But there has to be some money behind that to do it. You're right.
Yeah, I'll just chime in really shortly before we go on to the next subject. But there's a couple key things that I'd like to point out. Number one, a lot of these cultures are oratory. They are not focused on written. They're focused on storytelling and transferring that knowledge from one to another.
Multimodal.
Sure, yes, but remember, there's got to be a level of trust because a lot of these cultures have seen decimation from other sovereignties, and two, the entire description of how we approach them and academic or corporate and all that kind of that alone is Western bias. Not even, it comes down to a matter of trying to align in thought first and creating that rapport to be able to understand how there might be a bridge between that technology and the culture in and of itself. So there's a lot more work that would have to be done than, oh yeah, we'll just go in and copy all their corpus and and then now we've got the language there. It's like that is a fraction of a percent of what would need to be done to properly convey the thinking and the living and the methodologies and all of those kinds of things. And I think that's the most difficult part. Now, I do see AI as a ray of hope because AI is made to think like people. So that's how we build off of it, is to try to replicate the neural pathways of people. So if we can get it to a point where if we can influence the way it thinks, then you may see better representation there. And so that you're right, Ryan. It's a much larger conversation. I'll just leave it there and we can go on with the rest of the report.
I do want to bring in Jen's comments really quick. She was responding to you, Jimmy, but she was saying first, my roommate is already working on digitizing older documents via AI in the heritage space. That's a really interesting space. She was talking to you, Andy. And then she was saying, yes, Jimmy, there's so much to be said around cultural sensitivity and actual community connection rather than just going in everything blazing and assuming that this is what is wanted and necessary. Yeah, we've definitely tried that before. Again, as I always say, people that look like me have tried that before and said, we know what's best for you, and just go along with it, and that causes a lot of problems. So yes, I do hope, I am very optimistic as well, Jimmy, that AI and the multimodal side of things. In fact, I listened to students who proposed an idea. It was just theoretical, but they were just proposing an idea of actually capturing the storytelling through dance using video capture, but that video capture being able to tell the larger story of the movements and things like that. It was very, very cool. I don't know that that will necessarily be created, but it was just students coming up with ideas on how to use AI appropriately in those heritage type situations. I thought it was really cool. Okay, we do have to move on to our last section really quick before we wrap it up, and that is actually public opinion. Sort of a good pivot from right where we just were. And there's a couple, we can kind of just all jump on this one really quick, but there's a couple quick highlights here I just want to mention. It says people across the globe are more cognizant of AI's potential impact and more nervous. That's not surprising, right? We just kind of talked about that. The survey from Ipsos shows that over the last year, the proportion of those who think AI will dramatically affect their lives in the next 3 to 5 years has increased from 60 to 66%. Moreover, 52% expressed nervousness towards AI products and services, making a 13% point rise from 2022. That goes in line with what I would think would be the case. In America, Pew data suggests that 52% of Americans report feeling more concerned than excited for AI, rising from 38% in 2022. There's a couple of the highlights there. Let's just pause on that one really quick. I think, I don't know, just real quick poll here. Are you guys surprised by those numbers? They seem to be in line with what I would think.
Yeah. I don't see anything that was a shock or discrepancy or anything like that. If anything, and I'm sure we'll go into this, that really stood out for me was the awareness of any particular or specific AI tool, right? I would figure that there was, because of the circles that we travel in, certain tools would be far more prominent in the mainstream, but I was surprised that it was only like 3. Like 3 tools, and that was it. And and so I think that was the everything else looks about right to me. Yeah.
I will say one of the highlights here that jumped out to me, because there's also some good ones about Gen Z and baby boomers and things like that, which I thought was interesting. But the one after that, which I didn't agree with, not agree with. It's a data. I agree with it, I suppose. But it says an international survey from the University of Toronto suggests that 63% of respondents are aware of ChatGPT. That part I totally would go, yeah, okay, 63, that sounds right. The second part, though, of those aware, so of the 63%, around half report using GPT at least once weekly. Now that sounds incredibly high to me. And that's just me going off of conversations with clients and, someone, my data is skewed too and limited as well. But we've also heard Carl talk about this, about how, once weekly, maybe, I don't know. That just sounds high. But again, that is of the 63% they're aware of GPT. So it's not the whole. But I don't know. Did you guys find that number to be? Do you find that to be high? I don't know. I find that to be high in 2023.
I not at weekly.
No. Okay.
No. Now, if you know about it, then that means you've probably tried it, and once a week to go, oh, hey, answer this question. Especially if you get frustrated with a standard Google search, because apparently that's been getting worse and worse. So, learning about something, or Perplexity, or any of those kinds of things, like if you're just in chat just going, oh hey, yeah, can you tell me about this thing, it's great. It's a great research tool. It's a great way to jump off and learn about something. So the weekly, no. Now if that was 50% on the daily, that would floor me. Like, right. Wait, you're saying half of the 63% of people who know about ChatGPT use it every single day? I'd be like, that's fantastic. But that would surprise me.
And that's also specifically ChatGPT. That's not taking into factor any other AI tools, your Claudes or otherwise. Right. So, that's what they had the data on or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It just sounded high to me. Look, I think ChatGPT, specifically OpenAI, I should say, allowing in 2024, they've allowed you to now use 3.5 without signing into anything. Same as you would be able to do with Claude. I think that will definitely open up use cases where people were just hesitant about having to create an account or something like that. So that would be interesting. But yeah, anyway, we can leave that there. But I thought that was interesting. Any other stats?
Yeah, I wanted to, you kind of mentioned it, but I want to give some more color to the generational opinion about AI and its impact on improving your life. So boomers, me, only 40% think that it's going to help me get things done. I think it will. But moving smoothly up to Gen Z, the latest generation, 63% of them think it's going to help them get things done. Similarly, for entertainment options, only 40% of boomers think it's going to increase the value of their entertainment options. They're still watching cable TV. And then 60% of Gen Z think it will. Same for health, for my job, the economy in my country, and for the job market. In the job market, boomers say only 23% say that it will improve the job market for me. Why? Because we're retiring. And 40% of Gen Z think that it will improve their opportunities in the job market.
Any other ones on there before we wrap it up, Jimmy, that you want to pull up for public opinion? I mean, it's cool, right? It's cool to watch it. I think it's going to shift even more, obviously, in 2024. But it is cool to kind of see where it is, and some of those numbers kind of shock me. It's higher than I would have expected, which is cool. I'm glad to see that, actually, and I'm glad that the younger generations are
the three or four specific tools that are known, like ChatGPT is known, right? And Midjourney is known, or Stable Diffusion is known. And I'm sure Elon will like that 16% know what Grok is, though I'm sure that's specifically because he owns an entire platform talking about it. But but I wanted to highlight that what this means is our job. We're going to have one for a while, because we're going to be talking about all of these things over and over. We're going to be talking about what the latest stuff is, and we're going to discuss what the underpinnings are and things like that. So it highlighted for me that if everybody just knows what ChatGPT is and Midjourney is, and that's it, then we've got so much more work to do. And to inform people, hey, there's these all these other tools that may be far more applied to what you're doing. You know?
Well, that
and
ends
of
up
course,
being
I'll take this opportunity to talk about. And if you want to know how that relates to your sci-fi interests, look out for Sci-Fi AI show coming out really, really soon, where we'll cover
absolutely.
actually a few of the topics that we talked about. This, like the multimodal, the dance communication, all of that kind of stuff. That actually ended up in our first episode. So
I can't wait to hear it.
something to keep an eye out for.
And also, I think that was also you had a different pivot, but a different transition. But it was a perfect transition to say that, yeah, you said we'll have jobs for a while. This show's going to be around for a while, as long as we're we have something to say about it. And with that, I want to say that a week from this Friday is our 200th episode. So not this Friday, but next Friday is our 200th episode. So yeah, we've even done 100 and whatever it is at this point, over 190 episodes talking about all things AI. And we have no intent of slowing down. Obviously, we're only expanding, going into other areas like sci-fi, what Jimmy and Beth are doing. Also want to make sure that people know that it was our April 18th show that covered the first half of this report. So if you happen to be listening today and you're like, they started in chapter 6, what happened to the first 5? Go back and listen to the episode part 1 from 418. And then I just want to wrap it up really quick by telling you what the rest of what we have this week. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about Edge AI, as it becomes easier and easier and easier to put LLMs on, Raspberry Pis. What does that mean when your doorbell is smarter than the smartest, ChatGPT or Sonnet or whatever you want to put in there? What does that mean? So we'll talk about that tomorrow. That should be interesting. Wednesday, we have the news. Thursday, we're going to be talking about how AI is flipping SaaS. So instead of software as a service, service as a software. And that comes specifically out of a LinkedIn article. We'll dive into that. And Friday, we have our biweekly review. So like, hey, what did we just talk about over these last 2 weeks? Might bring up some of these topics as well. That's what we have coming up the rest of this week, guys. Thanks for everybody hanging out. Thanks, Jen, for the comments. And we will see you guys tomorrow to talk about Edge AI. Can't wait. Bye.
Aloha.